screen there. So hopefully you can all see the screen now. As I mentioned, for those who were on the line at the beginning, we have close to 50 people registered for this session, and while we typically just ask folks to mute their lines during the session, that's just too many people to reliably know that their lines are going to be muted. So I put this in what's called presentation mode, and when at various points we'll open it up for questions. We may wait and just do that all at the end, so we can kind of plow through stuff. So at that time, we certainly do want your questions. It's just with that many people on, and particularly since we're trying to record as well, we want to have the audio as good as possible. Let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to go over some registration deadlines, etc. We'll talk a bit about age groups and exemptions, qualifying for the state tournament, some rules, highlights, and reminders, and then Q&A, as I mentioned. So registration and deadlines. I'm not going to go through this section. Those of you who have been coaches for a while know that for at least the last year, we've spent a heck of a lot of time going in detail on all the different forms. I'm going to just do a few highlights. Part of the reason that we did that was even though your area may be turning in forms in a timely manner and pristine and everything is accurate and up to date, there was a huge problem that we were having with that, and so we wanted to spend at least a year going through and making sure that we went through in detail for every sport. We can back off from that. But the one thing that you should be very well aware of is that no athlete, no volunteer, no one can participate in any manner in a Special Olympics program without a valid or current medical form or volunteer apps. And there is no exception to that. Athlete shows up, first day of practice, they don't have a medical, they didn't walk in with it, sorry, they're going to have to sit on the bench until they get their medical in. There can be no exceptions to that. In terms of the deadlines and such, this is pretty much the same as what we've had last year. There is there are two additions or clarifications for things. First, we have our training registration deadline, which is January 29th, and that is the date. That is the date when everything needs to be in our computer system for everybody on your teams who are participating in your basketball program. This should be truly everyone that's there. It does set who is available or who is eligible to attend the state basketball tournament, provided they meet the other criteria that's there. But we do, even if you have athletes who have no intention of going to the state tournament, we do want to get them registered and get them, or need to have them in there. These dates that you see here also, these are the actual dates that things need to be in the computer for your GMS manager or whoever's handling that for your area. In the past year or two, at the request of some areas, we had given some earlier dates out to coaches, and that kind of just led to too much confusion, and gave you a date maybe a week prior to this. These are the real dates. So as we'll see on the next slide, talk to your GMS manager, whoever that is for your area. Talk to whoever handles your medicals, your volunteer apps, to make sure that, or to find out exactly what their time frame is to get it in. If you give your GMS manager your entire training roster on January 29th, I can guarantee you they're not going to make the deadline. In almost every case, your GMS manager is a volunteer, just like you are, and they have to work this around their time and such. So again, those dates, these are the real dates, and so work with that GMS manager on that. If you don't know who your GMS manager is for your area, talk to someone in your area leadership, your area director, or if you have a sport coordinator, which I know some of the programs use that type of model, that individual can tell you who that is. So again, January 29th, that's when we need to have everybody in. If they're not in the system and registered as training by that date, they're not eligible to compete at the state tournament. They can certainly participate in your program, but they're not eligible to go then. Then, on February 3rd, we need your team rosters and team assessments due. We'll look at that form in just a moment. This is something we added in last year with a little bit of it didn't go as smoothly as we wanted. But this, again, we'll talk about the assessment form, but this gives us your roster. The assessment portion, there's no skill stations to go through or anything. It's just your best sense. And once you submit those rosters, that team is set. That roster is set at that point. And we're doing it on the 3rd because that's just prior to the first tournament that's being held, which is being hosted at UMBC. We'll see that in a little bit. We mentioned before on the 29th of January, that's when all your people have to be registered or in the system as training in your program. We know that some people, as I used in the example before, some people will walk in that day with their medical or their volunteer application and on your first day of practice, or they may show up for their first practice on the 29th if you're still or whatever your deadline is, if you're still accepting them at that point, and it takes some time to get that through, get whatever copies, get it scanned, whatever, and get it in. So you have a few additional days, about 10 days, to then get that in, have the actual form gotten into headquarters. All the medicals need to be valid through March 22nd by that date. If they don't have a medical that's valid through that date, by that date, they're not eligible. And same thing goes for the volunteer applications. Also, we'll talk a little bit about this, although this is not the focus of the session. That's the date we wanted to sync this up for all of our events. That same missing forms date is the date by which all head coaches have to have their certification completed and have that into the state. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but those are the same date. And then finally, the competition registration date is February 29th. Now, at that point, since we've already received your rosters by February 3rd, we'll take care of entering them into GMS. We did that last year, and I'm sorry, GMS is our computer system that handles all of our competitions. But we entered the rosters for you last year. That resolved a huge problem that we had in the past with the rosters never being clear as to what is what. So for the competition registration deadline, you've actually got it somewhat easy. You don't have to add anybody in there, but that is the date by which, if you have any additional delegation members, they need to be in. If you have anybody who's doing individual skills, either level 1 or level 2, we'll talk about that. That's a new thing this year. There's 2 levels of skills. They need to be entered, and they need to have their scores in at that point. If you have any head of delegation or anything like that, you would add them in. At that date, excuse me, any athlete or unified partner who doesn't have an event will be removed from the basketball tournament. Okay? And again, these are all dates that are when they need to be in, not any kind of a buffer period built into that. That said, we do know that there are unique situations that pop up from time to time, and if you've got a truly unique situation or a problem, talk to or have your area director talk to your regional sports director. We'll give you those contact names at the end. And they'll see what they can do. In many cases, they have some flexibility and can make some adjustments there. Can't do it all the time, but in many cases they can. I should also say, I'm sorry, that these slides also will be sent out to you by tomorrow, close of business. I want to wait until we get the link in YouTube established for this recording, and that sometimes can take a little while to get that set up and uploaded depending upon the file size. But you will get all this information, as well as the next day or two you'll also get the basketball guide, sports guide. Again, work with your area leadership and talk. If you don't know who that GMS person or who your medical person is, get to know them now. Again, we talked about the athletes and the program that they need, or the forms that they need and such. I'm not going to go through that. This is the athlete medical form. You should all be familiar with these. Again, the information is there, and if you have any questions on that, you can ask them at the end of the session. Similarly for volunteers, again, need to get all them in. The one variation on volunteers is that if the volunteer is a minor, which is often the case or sometimes the case for unified partners, where the person is under the age of 18, there's an additional minor reference form that needs to have 2 live signatures completed for that and all. So Let's see, so this is the volunteer medical or volunteer application. Again, you should all be very familiar with that. And this is the student minor reference form that you should be familiar with as well. And then the incident or accident report. Again, take the time to, you should have copies of these on hand. You use these in case of any kind of an injury or any kind of a damage to property. It's really designed for a situation where someone was injured, but could be used for damage to property. The one thing I would ask is that if you notice down at the bottom here, it says to send it to Special Olympics Maryland, and our Senior Director of Operations there. Absolutely do that, but in addition, be sure to send it to your area director so he or she knows what's going on. Your area director is responsible and accountable for everything that happens in the name of Special Olympics in their territory. It's either a county or a group of counties, or Baltimore City in that case. And they need to be aware of this, and that can, depending upon when the incident happens, oftentimes your practices are over weekends. It may take a few days before the area director would get notified by headquarters. Let them know right away as well. Okay. Age groups. Just to clarify, Special Olympics Maryland has had an age group policy for its team sports for, gosh, I guess 6, 7, 8 years now. It's been a little while. As many of you may have heard, it is under review. We have a small task force that is looking at it to see what, if any, adjustments need to be made to it. Any of those adjustments are not going to come into play related to the competition or the basketball season. It's just the timing is not going to work out with that. However, there is the policy as written is really, it reads much stricter than how it is applied. And I want to give you a little bit of heads up on how it's applied. We'll send you also the form that you need with the slides when these go out to you so that you can have that. For team sports, there are 4 age groups that Maryland uses, 8 to 11, 12 to 15, 16 to 21, and then 22 plus. There have been an older age group, and that really just, we dropped that. It just doesn't, we never get enough athletes in that age group to do that. Unlike what it says in the policy, you can, it says in the policy you can accept, request exceptions. There was a limit that would be in place at this point in time based on that policy. We do not apply that limit. There is no maximum per team. So you can request as many as you need for your particular team. It does require a written request, and extreme differences with athletes, particularly under the age of 21, will likely not be approved. As a general rule of thumb, how we've been applying it recently, and generally we've gotten some positive feedback on that, not that this is where things will wind up in terms of any rewrite or adjustment to the policy, but generally speaking, in most cases it's asking to have an athlete from a younger age group play on a team that's in an older age group. That's not always the case, but that's typically the situation that is in play. So and in most cases, it's asking someone to play on an adult team. General rule of thumb: if the athlete or athletes that you want to move up are 18, 19, 20, or 21, and you want them to play in an adult team, pretty much without exception, I don't think we've ever denied that. That's going to be, in essence, that'll be automatically approved. We still, because we have the policy on the books, we still need to go through the process until that's changed. But that is anything 18 and above, we generally will accept. Anybody, if you're asking for a 16 or 17-year-old to play up with an adult team, we're probably going to ask a few questions. In most cases, our coaches are using pretty good judgment in terms of who would be appropriate and who wouldn't be appropriate. But just because of the difference in age there, we'll ask a few questions. We may go out or ask for some kind of evidence for that. But generally speaking, 16 to 17, there's a pretty good chance that that's going to be approved. 14 to 15, there's probably a pretty good chance that will really, well, there's no probably about it. That will be looked at very carefully. There needs to be a real compelling argument for that. Again, just for social reasons and such there. But that said, again, our coaches have been pretty good in terms of appropriateness with that, and in almost every case when we've gotten a request for 14 or 15-year-olds to play up in the adult bracket, the ones that we have received, I think there maybe are 2 exceptions to that. Over the last 2 years, all but maybe 2 of those kind of requests have been approved. Not that we get many at that age break, but that typically is the case. 13 or younger, I can tell you right now, that's not going to be approved. I don't think there's ever been one, and I would be hard-pressed to imagine a situation where a 13-year-old would be approved to play on a 21 or 22, or with a 22-year-old, or in many cases, it's really the 13-year-old playing with a 30 or 40-year-old in those situations. That's almost definitely not going to be approved. We'll certainly give it due review, but it's hard to imagine a situation where that would be appropriate based on the policy that we have in place. So, but anyhow, so that hopefully can give you some guidelines. We have heard from some folks that they thought everything was going to be denied or that we were adhering to that policy strictly and as written, and we want to just be clear that the policy is in place. The policy, excuse me, is there for a reason. In general, we shouldn't have little kids playing with adults. So it certainly is there it has the purpose. How it's applied has been moderated some. So if you need to make use of it, it's there for you. Please keep in mind those requests, even the ones that I've told you will automatically be approved or almost definitely automatically be approved, still need to be submitted in writing. There's a form that you need to do for that. That needs to include, in order for it to be even considered, it needs to include the full proposed roster for the team, and it needs to include those individuals' dates of birth. Otherwise, you're asking us to make a decision without the information that we need to do so. In addition, that needs to be approved by the area director prior to it being even reviewed. That doesn't mean the area director has to make a live signature on the form. For this, unlike some other forms that we have for this, if the area director submits it for you or sends a follow-up email that says, yes, I approve of this request, that's fine. And then in addition, your regional sports directors are there to assist you with thinking through these things. Nick Anderson, who handles the Eastern Shore and Southern Maryland, Sam Hodap, who handles the Baltimore City area. His title isn't regional sports director, but for these purposes, he functions in that role. And, excuse me, Melissa Anger, who handles Western Maryland and Central Maryland, which is Howard, Montgomery, Prince George's counties, Carroll County and such, and then Western Maryland as well. Part of their role is now, well, their entire role is working on the sports program, but part of their role is to assist you with these kind of things. I know several areas have already started making use of their input to bounce ideas off of what likely will and will not be approved or what would work, and to think through things. So that's there. Again, browsing through. Excuse me. Qualifying for the tournament. In order to be eligible for the state tournament, again, you need to, as I've mentioned when we were talking about the deadlines before, you need to meet, your team or the individual needs to meet all the training and registration requirements and deadlines. In addition, if it is a player, if it is a team, they need to compete at the event-specific required qualifier. We have all those dates set right now. There's been a little fluctuation because of facility availability and such, but March 1st is the required qualifier for the 5v5 Player Development Unified teams, and that'll be at Glenelg Country School. I don't have all the specific times at this time. Don't ask for that later. We don't have all that at this point. But the date is March 1st at Glenelg. On March 8th, we actually have 2 of them going on. Not ideal from a from a coverage standpoint, but it's what we have available in terms of the facilities. So on March 8th, at the Glenelg Country School, we'll have the 3v3 required qualifier. That's for traditional 3v3 teams and Player Development Unified or PDU teams. Also on March 8th, at the McDaniel College in Westminster. We have the 5v5 traditional and unified required qualifier. That's for teams that are in the adult bracket or the adult age group, 22 and older. The first time, actually, this was back with, I think it was with soccer. There was a question. We had a team that could have gone either way. That's something we can work out with the coach as to whether they a given team should be with an older bracket or the younger bracket. If let's say if you have half and half on your roster, half are above are 22 and older, and half are 21 and younger. So we'll figure that out for you, or figure that out with you. I'm sorry, I should say. So again, March 8th, that's for the 22 and older, and then March 15th will be for 5v5 traditional and unified, and that will be for the 21 and younger teams, and that'll be at at Severn School. Yes, that March 15th is the weekend prior to the state tournament, and we try to avoid that. Facilities did not allow us to work that out. The one reason why I'm not terribly uncomfortable with having this one then is all of the 21 and younger teams are going to play at the same facility. Part of this, as you know, as those of you who are experienced coaches or have been with us for the last couple of years, the state tournament is held in Frederick, and we utilize a number of different schools. We use Hood College. We also use several of the high schools. Plus, this year we will also be using Maryland School for the Deaf as a site. And part of the issue is not knowing, making sure we have the qualifiers earlier, is being able to tell people what school they're going to go to or what facility, so they can communicate that to their team. Since all of the 21 and younger teams will be at the same facility, that's not an issue. It's just what division they'll be in or who's going to match up against who. So, again, not ideal to have it just the week prior to the tournament, the state tournament, but we can live with that. Let's see. Oh, I should also say, for those of you who were at the qualifier that was at Severn School last year, we will only be using one court in each gym. So the issue that we had in the one, I guess, main court will not be that same issue. We only have two courts functioning there. We'll have the bleachers pulled out. There'll be plenty of seating and such. Can't promise that the power won't go out as we had last year, but it will not be, if you're dreading seeing that because of the challenges we had last year, that will not be an issue in terms of the space use. Okay? So, if you're a team if you're on a team, you have to go to the event-specific required qualifier in order to be eligible. There are no exceptions to that. The main reason why we have that is so that we can see these teams together and potentially do some matchups on the fly and see that do we have the right matching for the state tournament. And the only way we can do that is by having all the teams of a given group or a given type there at the same time. Then in addition, teams must compete in a minimum of one additional qualifier. And I want to stress that's a minimum, I hope. As many of you know, I coach as well, putting on a volunteer hat for that. I coach soccer and track. And so I know it can be challenging getting out to additional competitions, but the competition is where the fun is for the athletes. Train and train and train, and then only go to a total of 3 competitions, 2 qualifiers, and then the state tournament for a 12-week season or however long it is that you're practicing. That's kind of boring. So please do work out additional qualifiers or additional competitions. To count as this minimum, it can be another multi-area sanctioned qualifier. You'll see on the next page, I think we have 8 of them already lined up right now, and we may get some additional ones. It could be league play between areas. We had approved last year doing some league play within a single area that had many 5v5 teams. That proved to be a bad decision because we didn't really get to see them play against other teams. And while that's certainly a good thing to do for additional competition opportunities, it can't count as this additional qualifier because we won't be able to see them play against other teams there. In addition, another option could be sanctioned competition with another team of comparable ability. We need to know about it ahead of time. As you see, it's a sanction in advance. It has to have certified or licensed referees officiating, has to follow all the rules as noted there, and the results have to come into headquarters afterwards. It is my hope that many teams will utilize this as additional, that qualifier of that type, as additional competition above and beyond the minimum. So if you have, there's a team nearby to you that you can play at, or who's comparable to you in terms of ability level and such, and you can go play against them, and then maybe they can come to you. You can do that within the confines of your own practice session or your own practice schedule, typically, in most cases. So please do take advantage of that. Then, in addition, you can have what we call a sanctioned in-house qualifier. That's a qualifier where it's just the athletes from your program. That's permitted for PDU and individual skills only. Would prefer not to do it for PDU because we still would like to see them play against other players, but we realize there are some specific challenges with PDU that we allow that for now. The individual skills, again, that's more of an objective competition, so you can do that within there. There is no required qualifier, specific required qualifier for all individual skills athletes also, I should point out. They do need to go to one of the multi-qualifiers, and several of them, I don't know that we have them all listed on the next page, which ones have skills and which don't, but most of them, or many of them, do. And so we can, there should be plenty of opportunities, but the second one could be at your own practice session. Here are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 qualifiers that we have to date. Thank you to Montgomery and Howard counties in particular for hosting 2 qualifiers each, and then also to Calvert County, Carroll County, and Anne Arundel County. That's where the Severance School is located, and also the Baltimore area. Baltimore City and Baltimore County are sort of co-involved with the one being held at UMBC. Again, these are all the dates. As we have registration processes for this, we will let you know how to get in for these, and we'll post with it if we have the sanction form for these. We don't have the sanction for all of them, but if we have received the sanction form, we'll also post that on my SOMD. So again, as a reminder one more time, while these are all excellent qualifiers to go to, the required one for 5v5 PDU is at Glenelg Country School on March 1st. Then the required one for 3v3 traditional and PDU is on March 8th again, excuse me, at Glenelg Country School. For those of you who were here in the past, we had both of those previously on the same weekend, and the facility just did not work out for that. That was the preferred situation, but it just didn't work this time out. Then for the 22 and older 5v5 teams, that's traditional and unified at McDaniel College on March 8th. And then for the 5v5 teams that are 21 and under at the Severance School. If you are interested, or if there is a qualifier that you're planning to host that doesn't show on here right now, please work with your area director and your regional sports director to make sure that we have that information. Or if you would like to host a small qualifier, you can do that and work with them as well. Hosting a qualifier does not mean that you have to be able to handle every team in the state to come to that. I would generally say you probably want at least 2 full-size courts, but if you need to put a cap on it, you can put a cap on it. Some of these, not the required ones, of course, but some of these have to do that just because of space and time consideration. So that's certainly something that we can work with. We will also work with you with our officials resources to get officials. That's only if we know well enough in advance to be able to let them know and recruit them for that. So can't promise that we'll always have officials if you tell us later, but we'll do everything we can to help you. And we have a great officiating crew, many of whom are back. Several of whom, I think, I should say, are going to the World Games in the summer of 2015 in LA. So we have a great crew of folks there. Okay, some rules and processes and such. Head coach certification. Again, this is not the purpose of tonight's session. But just because basketball is the first sport where this applies, I did want to touch on this briefly. This is not a new policy. It's been a long-standing policy that, quite honestly, Special Olympics Maryland just hasn't consistently adhered to it. In fact, the policy is that Special Olympics Incorporated has is that all coaches, not just all head coaches, all coaches need to be have sports certification. We're rolling it out because we have been inconsistent, and we're building our systems for that. That all head coaches have to have their certification for starting with the basketball teams or the basketball programs this season, and it will apply to all sports as we go through. Head coach is defined as the person who is the named coach for each team. Each team has to have a designated head coach. That person obviously is a head coach in that case. Whoever your head person is for individual skills, you need to have somebody designated for that. Excuse me, and that person would need to have certification. And then if you use the sport coordinator model that several areas use, Baltimore County, I don't want to, I shouldn't give an exhaustive list. I do know two that do it, which is Baltimore County and Howard County, but I know that there are others who are either using that model or are rolling to that. That's where there's, in essence, there's a head coach who oversees the program and all the sports decisions with that, and then they have the individual team head coaches report to them. And that kind of a model, that sport coordinator, in addition to the team head coaches, that sport coordinator would need to have sports certification. If the sport coordinator really is someone who is handling a lot of the administrative stuff, the paperwork and so on, then that wouldn't apply. Again, I'm not going to go through all this. There is another session. I don't remember the exact date and time, but there's another session that we're offering for coaches to ask questions about this. I think it's next week. I'll be sure to include that in the follow-up email that has the link for the YouTube and the slide deck and so on. That'll go out by the close of business tomorrow. Again, I'm not going to go through the details here. If anybody has a whole lot of questions on this specific to basketball, if you want to stay on the session after we get taken care of all the other coaches' questions and such related to basketball for the season, I can stay on for a little while and answer some questions. The one thing I did want to note is we will be applying it to all coaches in the future at some point, not just head coaches, since that actually is the true policy. Then significant rule changes. The Special Olympics basketball rules were updated in March of 2014. Actually, almost all the sports were updated then. That was just prior to, or several months prior to, the USA Games. There were a couple changes. And then we're also applying what we're calling an SOMD rule change for a couple things here. So first is there is now a second level of individual skills. We'll walk through those in just a moment. They should look familiar to you. At least two of the three should look familiar. Roster sizes. We adjusted the roster size last year. This is the maximum size of each roster. And we actually made another adjustment here to give a little bit more flexibility. So for 5v5, traditional, unified, and player development, your roster has to have a minimum of 8 players and a maximum of 12. And then similarly for 3v3, traditional and PDU, it's a minimum of 5 players and a maximum of 8. I think the one that we adjusted this year was the maximum for the 3v3 traditional. The others were in place. We made that change last year. The main reason for doing that is during practices, this allows you to actually set up a game using the players on your team, and even if 1 or 2 does not show up for a particular practice. So you do not have to have that many. You don't have to make use of it. I mean, you have to have the minimum, but you don't have to max out. You don't have to have 12 people on each of your 5v5 teams. It is an option that's there should you wish to go that high. And again, we're saying players there. That includes, in each of these cases, your unified partners or your mentors in the case of PDU. Then also this has been requested quite vehemently last year, but it was in the middle of the season, and I have an aversion to changing rules in the middle of the season. But for the 3v3, and this is a Special Olympics Maryland rule. This is different from what it says in the Special Olympics rules. But for the 3v3, we will play a full 20 minutes, and with the points counting during that full 20 minutes. unless there is a difference of 15 points or greater. So the game will go for the full 20 minutes or until 15 points, there's a difference of 15 points. Again, different from what it says in the rules, which says the rules say when somebody hits 20 points, one of the teams hits 20 points, the game's over. We're going to play it straight through. This was a strong request from a lot of coaches, and we'll go through it. If for some reason we find that this is not the right thing to do, we'll deal with that for next season. So, I'm sorry. Go back here. The rules. Here we go. The individual skills. Again, we mentioned that there is now a level 2. We don't offer the speed dribble, so don't count that. But so level 1 is the traditional one. The one we've been offering as individual skills for many, many years. There's the target pass. I'm not going to go into the details on that. You can read the rules there. There is the 10-meter dribble, which is a straight dribble down a 10-meter lane. And then also the spot shot, which is a series of actually 12 shots from designated points around the key, with varying points for each. Special Olympics has now offered or added the level 2 skills. We think many of the athletes who are doing the level 1 skills could benefit from this. They can't do both. They need to do one or the other. And even if we have one athlete entered in the level 2 skills, we will be offering it. So don't be concerned, is it going to be just my athlete who's doing this or just a handful? We'll still be offering it. That's the only way that we can get a new event rolled in. If we don't offer it and don't hold it, it's not going to happen. So for this, the 12-meter dribble, this is actually essentially this one and the next one. I think it's the next one. Used to be part of or are part of the team assessment when you're doing the individual assessment of players for that. The athlete is timed 60 seconds. They start on, these are all cones that are here, and this is 12 meters, of course. They start here and they dribble, weaving in and out of the cones. And well, when they get to the finish line here, again, dribbling to that, they put the ball down. They then run back without the ball to the start line, get another ball. Again, continue to weave in and out. Put the ball down and going through as many times or passing as many cones as possible within the 60 seconds. They get 1 point for each of the cones out here on the floor that they pass during that time. Okay. Let's see. We're also looking, I can't promise that we'll make this happen, but we're also looking at, for all of these, since these are new, to see if we can't get a video created of this and post that as well, so you can see them both in terms of how they operate, or how the skill is done, in addition to how to officiate it or how to set it up and such. For perimeter shooting, you need to mark a semicircle, and this could be with a dotted line with tape or whatever on the floor that goes from the baseline to the bottom of the free throw circle and such. The athlete then starts back at the foul line. They can then dribble in, and they can shoot from anywhere outside of that circle. They then get their own rebound, dribble back outside that half circle, and shoot again as many times as they can within 60 seconds. I got to be honest, I don't recall exactly the points for that. I think it's just 2 points for each successful basket, but again, you can read through the rules and that'll be clear there. If the ball does go, gets a weird rebound and goes off to the side, there's a spare ball that's here that the athlete can choose to take that as opposed to going and retrieving the ball that went out of the way. So again, they shoot that for 60 seconds. And then finally, yeah, and it's right there, the 2 points are awarded. This is new. Within that, the two previous ones were part of the team assessment that was in the rules. This is for the this is a passing drill. You basically have 2 lines marked here, and then a a straight line here. With 3 meters apart. The athlete, let's see, starts here. They dribble to the side and they pass it to the volunteer who's here. The athlete then, as soon as they pass it, needs to run over to the other side, receive the pass, and then pass it back, and then back and forth again, as many as they can get in within 60 seconds. Again, read through the rules. They go into much more detail, and it should be relatively clear. And again, we're working to see if we can't get a video to help you with that. So those are the new skills. Again, a player and athlete can be in either the original or the level 1 skills that we've always offered, or can move up and attempt this level 2 skills. I would hope, although I could see where there could be some legitimate reasons for this, I would hope we don't look at taking some athletes who are on a team and moving them down to this. That's not the intent at all. This is to add a higher level of competition, of challenge for those athletes who are already in skills, or for whom you can't create a team for them. The next thing that was on the slide deck, rather than going back there for the moment, is the team assessment form. This is very similar to what you saw last year. Again, you provided the area, check off what event this is a team for. It is 1 per team. Do not try to put more than 1 team on the same form. You can. These are all electrons. They're cheap. You can make as many copies as you can and then just submit it electronically. Check off the age group in which they should be. Actually, I'm going to delete this 50 plus. I'm sorry, I should have done that before. So it'll be 22 plus is there. We need the coach's name, email, and phone. If you know your jersey color, go ahead and put it in. List the names of the athletes, or the names of the team members, I'm sorry. Athlete or partner, or in the case of a PDU team, if they're a mentor, their gender, their age, and if you know it, their jersey number. That is not required at this stage. Then, answer a couple questions here. Is this team essentially the same as it was last year? And if so, who was the coach of that team? You don't want to just assume that the same coach coached that team last year. Then we need to provide a team rating, which will be a number between 1 and 10. We'll look at those in just a second, that you'll put here. And then if you have any additional information you want to provide to us there. The team rating, and provided here for 313 and 515, this is a single number that you will pick that best describes your team when you have your best players on the court. So for 3v3, a level of 1, 2, 3, or 4, use teams that match these descriptions, and again, use your best judgment in terms of where they fall in there, whether they're on the high end of that group or the low end. Similarly for 5, 6, or 7, and so on. Same thing over here. We have levels A, B, C, D with the points here, and again, we're looking for what their points are, either 7 or 8 points, if you think they're at this level here, and so on. Give careful consideration to this. This isn't just an exercise, but you should be able to do this after you've seen your team practice or play some scrimmages or whatever there. We are not asking you to go through and run each athlete through an individual skill station. We really have not found that to be terribly valuable compared to this. This assessment will not be what we use for divisioning at the state tournament. This is for the beginning of the season, so that we can see who matches up based on coaches' initial review or initial assessment of what their team can do. So that once we get in and we actually see some competition and see some game scores and how teams played and so on down the line, that's going to be much more, in fact, actually will ultimately, when it comes to the state tournament, be the sole determining factor as to who plays against who, is our actual observations of the team. But this gives us something to give for the initial games or the initial tournaments, or as we will provide out to you, or actually Melissa Anger, who is going to be taking on as our basketball point person, will be sending out to you, is a roster of these are all the teams, the head coach contact information. This is their self-assessment and their level in terms of are they a 3v3 or 5v5 and so on, so that teams can look at matching up with that as well. That's the other reason why we want to get this as early as possible. Would love to have it earlier than February 3rd, but just realistically, we know a lot of teams won't be able to do that at that point any earlier than that. So you've got that. Then, we were talking about team assessment. I think I covered most of this. That's on there. The one other thing is that as we did last year, we will take care of entering your team rosters into the computer system. And we'll base that off of your team assessment form. That worked out really well last year and solved a lot of problems that we had prior to that. Some additional rules reminders, and hopefully this chart is helpful to you in terms of for 3v3 traditional and PDU and 5v5 traditional, unified, and PDU. Minimum and maximum roster size. Game time with the 3v3, 2 10-minute halves with a 2-minute halftime. 5v5 is a 4 6-minute quarters and a 5-minute halftime. How the clock management is handled for both timeouts. Sorry, went too far. And how the start of the game is done. Note that for game time, clock management, and timeouts, some of this may need to be adjusted based at certain tournaments based on what can be handled. Space and time considerations and constraints that are there. So that while this is what the rules say, and hopefully in most situations we can do this, there may be some adjustments that need to be taking place. Some additional rules reminders. This is nothing new. The new stuff we talked about earlier. For 3v3, there's no team fouls or individual fouls. However, if there is a problem, if either an athlete, a player, or a team is consistently fouling, the referees can take some action or have the coach make a substitution if it's an individual player. We hope it's not the case, but they could potentially eject the player or have a forfeit. Those are sort of extreme. It's very rare that we've had to go to anything like that, but that problem does pop up once in a while. Reminder about all the throw-in stuff there. Again, I'm not going to go through all the rules on 3v3, but when doing the throw-in, all of the defensive players need to be behind or between the foul line and the baseline. Offensive players can go anywhere. Offensive players are not restricted from being behind, back on the baseline side of the foul line. They can go around behind where the throw-in spot is if they want to. And the person who's inbounding the ball has 5 seconds, and they can't shoot. And then a reminder about the change of possession, about clearing the ball, that it needs to be brought back behind the foul line extended, and that can be done by a pass, can be done by a dribble, whatever works for your team. And that either the ball or the foot of the player needs to be touching or behind that foul line extended. So that's often a point of confusion. For 5v5 traditional and unified, again, these are just some reminders from the rules. Pressing and backcourt defense, there is no backcourt defense is permitted by a team that is leading by 15 points or more. It is permitted in all other situations. That said, we know that some coaches will get together and say, hey, let's not do any kind of a backcourt or any kind of a pressing. If you want to do that, that's on your own. Our officials will not, I'm being clear with you right now, they will not enforce that. So if you make an agreement with another coach and they decide to dissolve that agreement in the middle of a game, that's on you. We can't ask our officials to officiate based on anything other than what the rules are. And having them officiate examples here of of an agreement between coaches just is not realistic. That's also been one of the biggest, when we tried to do that, we didn't do it last year, but when we tried to do it in the past, that was one of the big points of contention with coaches and the officials in those situations. And then also just watch illegal contact. On the very few occasions where any kind of fighting or altercations erupt, typically it's because of that kind of a scenario. Obviously, the officials will enforce that, but you as a coach keep an eye on that as well. PDU, again, nothing really has changed here. I don't want to go through these in too much detail. You can read these on your own, but in summary, you have, for 3v3, you have 2 athletes on the court and 1 mentor. The mentor is there. While in basketball they have to play as part of the game, they're really there as an on-floor coach, as an on-floor mentor. They're interacting with the athletes. They're there in a teaching role and instructing. They are not there as a real player per se on the team. And there are some specific don'ts. They can't guard an opposing player. They can't shoot. They can't get in the way of an opposing player. They shouldn't be favoring anybody else. They can't take over a game, so on down the line. They also cannot take foul shots. That only applies to 5-on-5. And they can't be on the line during foul shots. Again, only applies to 5-on-5. And then again, those kind of reminders that are there as well about what would be ideal and what's good. A couple other additional rule reminders is that the 3-point shots count at all levels, not just for 5-on-5. The principle of meaningful involvement, that'll be in the guide there, but the bottom line is that every athlete on every team should have the opportunity, must have the opportunity to contribute meaningfully to their team. That does not mean that every athlete needs to be given the opportunity to be the star player on every team. That's not realistic. But they do need to have the opportunity to excel, to contribute, to be part not of the team and the action that's going on with the team, not just running on a 5v5 team, not just running up and down the court back and forth and really not contributing in any meaningful way. If there is an issue with that, we'll talk with the coach during the game, and if that continues and it's not resolved, it could result in a forfeit. We are not trying to get into the middle of your coaching strategy on that. That's one of the big challenges with this. It really is making sure that each athlete is involved with the game. Then uniform stuff, again, that's there. That's in the rules, and just as a reminder there for you. That's it. We'll open it up for questions. A couple as a reminder, and then I can stay on for at least, well, for hopefully as long as anybody may have questions here. If you are, but I did want to point out or remind you about your regional sport directors, Nick, Melissa, and Sam. Their role now, as has changed in the last 5 months, their role is exclusively on the sports program. They are there to help you, to answer questions. They are your primary contact. That is not me anymore. They are your primary contact, your area's primary contact for anything related to sports. They report to me, except for Sam, but Sam works very closely with us. So that's what they're there for. So make use of them in almost any case, unless one of them's on leave. If you send me an email asking a question, I'm going to pass it on to them anyway. So go directly to them. It's going to be quicker. That said, and again, we still have close to 40 people on the line. So what I think would be best, rather than just having a free-for-all, is if we can go through, and hopefully I'll remember all the areas here. They may not be in the right order, but if you all could keep your phones muted, you can do that by keeping either using your mute function or using *6. I'm going to unmute the lines, and we'll just go through and ask each county if there's any questions that they have. And if you have a question related to the sports certification, please hold that till the end, and we'll just open up the lines at that point, and we can ask that. But that doesn't apply. Not everybody has questions about that. So,
presentation mode is now disabled.
Okay. So again, if you could have your phone muted, and until I ask, but do we have anybody from Allegheny County who has a question? Okay, no question.
What county was that, Mike?
Allegheny County. Cumberland, our friends out west. Nope. Okay. Anne Arundel County. Anybody from Anne Arundel County who has a question?
Yeah, Mike, I'm from Anne Arundel County. It's Katie Sheeman.
Okay, Katie?
Uniforms for schools. We don't necessarily always have a basketball shirt. We usually have like a red T-shirt with a big number on the back and our county insignia on the front.
Yes.
Is that acceptable?
If it matches the, so you have the numbers on the front and back,
Not on the front, I don't think, just on the back.
Yeah, if you can get the numbers on the front, that would be with it. I mean, they need to look like basketball players is the bottom line. Even though they're doing skills, it doesn't have to match the uniforms that the teams are wearing, and all of your skills athletes don't have to have uniforms that match each other. But they are basketball players. They need to look like basketball players.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. It sounds like there's somebody else from Anne Arundel who had a question.
Yeah, Mike Schlew.
Hi.
I got junior skills. We really don't do anything other than practice. That's all we can do with these children. So I don't have to worry about any of the overnight stuff at all because we'll never be overnight, correct? I know.
I don't know what you mean by you don't have to worry about the overnight stuff. If you're talking about what's on the forms, actually, yes, you do. On the medical,
I've already filled out the form.
Yeah, the medical forms, and just to clarify for folks, there's a housing waiver that's on there that's really just acknowledging that the athlete or the family member, whoever is signing for them, understands that there is a policy in place. If that's not signed, that's going to get rejected. Your form's going to get rejected.
Okay.
Other than that, I don't know that there is anything overnight related unless it's something within your particular area that you're doing for basketball.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other from Anne Arundel? Okay, Baltimore County. Again, remember to unmute your phone. Hearing none. Baltimore City. Any questions from anybody from Baltimore City? Okay. The C's, I'm sure, are out of order, but because there's 4 of them. But Cecil County. Anybody on the call from Cecil County who has a question? Okay. Charles County. Anybody from Charles County who has a question? Great. And I'm hoping everybody is that you don't have a question rather than you're forgetting to unmute or can't figure out how to unmute your phones. Calvert County. Any questions from anybody from Calvert County? Nope. Okay. Carroll County. Any questions from Carroll County? Nope. Okay. Frederick County.
I think we're good, Mike. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Craig. Good to hear you. Okay.
Is somebody speaking from Frederick?
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead. That was Craig there for a second, but if somebody else has a
Craig,
question.
go ahead and finish, and then I was unmuting my phone, so I missed what
No,
happened.
I'm good, Jackie. Go ahead. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, this is Jackie. And I had a question, just a confirmation regarding the uniforms, which Craig may have asked. We bought our uniforms before we didn't realize we didn't have numbers in the front. I embroidered some on some of the uniforms.
Oh, my God.
They've been wavered I mean, they're really a nice official basketball uniforms, but we only have numbers on the back. Is that going to be acceptable again this year?
I can tell you if it's been, I don't want to make a blanket statement that we'll allow uniforms without numbers on the front. That's not what the rule says. But if it is something that has been approved in the past, I'm sure that we can make that same accommodation, work with Melissa Anger. She may just want to take a look at them and see. But if it's something that we've allowed in the past, particularly if you're talking about for skills or these team uniforms?
No, I'm talking about for team play. Craig, on the 5-on-5 and our 3-on-3 teams, and some of our skills players also wear these uniforms as well, and they're quite nice. And they've been wavered in the past.
Right.
But I just wanted. I was always anxious about it, so some of my own 3-on-3 teams I embroidered some, but last year we needed different sizes, so not everybody had theirs embroidered on the front, and so I just wanted to know whether we'll be okay again this year, or whether I better start working on embroidering.
Yeah, I understand. The best answer that I can give you, having not seeing them and not knowing necessarily what was done in the past, but that situation is talk to Melissa. Generally speaking, if it's something that we've approved in the past, we will probably approve it again. And that's the best I can answer you right now. But Melissa, I'm sure will be able to help you work that out pretty quickly.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Anyone else from Frederick? Nope. Garrett? Okay, no one from Garrett. Hartford. Anybody from Hartford County with a question? Nope. Okay. Howard County. Anybody from Howard County who has a question?
Hi, Mike. This is Cara.
Hi, Cara. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I have two questions. One, you didn't mention if we're for the 5v5 player development, if we still have that fast break rule.
Yeah, I didn't touch on it here, but yes, that is the rules for player development have not changed. So
Okay.
in any kind of a situation like this, going through the slides, we could be here for 3 hours if we covered everything. So yes, but that definitely is still, and that has not changed.
Okay, and one other question. It's a rule that has been in place, but we've had difficulty with it. The mentors playing defense against the athletes. We've had a couple of games where the mentors, and they were doing a legal fast break, whereas they were passing the ball. Somebody was passing the ball from one athlete to the other, and the mentor, they didn't put their hands up or anything, but they impeded the progress. They kind of stepped in the way so that they couldn't pass the ball and get down the court.
Yeah, that would be a violation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what kind of because they didn't call it, and while they're playing, it's difficult to get the officials' attention
Sure.
sometimes.
Yeah, now I'll put another hat on. Many of you also know I officiate not basketball, but I officiate soccer and I officiate track. So legitimate certified official. In any kind of a team situation, the official certainly is going to adhere to the rules, but they're also he or she is going to make a balance between the flow of the game. Was something intentional? Was it flagrant? Whatever. Based on the ability of the players on the team, because the reality is if the officials called every single violation that happened, you would be, particularly in a 5-on-5 game where there's foul shots involved, you wouldn't have a game. So I can't speak to a specific game that might have happened or the situation there. It could be that the official thought that it was totally unintentional, and so let it slide, maybe talk to the coach on the side or something like that and say, hey, just keep an eye on that. I really can't give you an answer to that other than to say that the rule is that's not permitted, and the official is doing his or her best to have a real game going on, and potentially in that situation had a made a call that wasn't as clear.
Okay.
So, but that definitely is the rule.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else from Howard with any questions?
Hey, Mike, just one thing. Since when I was doing the stuff, this is Al Minor, when I was doing the stuff for national games, one of the things that we had to make sure we adhered to was, for the uniforms, was the high school guidelines for uniforming and numbering.
Yes.
That document should be made available through my SOMD and to the counties. That way, if they have any questions about future orders, they've got the guideline about how uniforms are supposed to be numbered.
Right. We made the decision, so this is, I guess, a Maryland variation as well. For those of you who aren't aware, there are basically, if you follow the High School Federation or actually the FIBA rules as well, no no digit on a uniform can be higher than 5, and that's because of officials using their hands. And while that is the rule, we explicitly state in the sports guide, which you guys will get a copy of, that while we'd really like you to follow that, we know we're not gonna disqualify a team who has a 7 or a 9.
No, I wasn't really talking about that. It was if teams or counties have questions about putting numbers on uniforms, what size, locations, front, back, those guidelines should be made available so when they go and make their purchases, they're spending the money, that they're not having to go embroider numbers on stuff later.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely locate those. I know we've got them and post them there. Thanks. That's Al, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Wasn't sure I recognized your voice there. Good to hear you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry I misinterpreted that. Anybody else from Howard?
Mike, I'm sorry. This is Brian. I wanted to go back to Carr's point that she was bringing up. It was in my game, and I pointed out to the official because it happened a couple different times, but the official's response was, well, they're not supposed to do that. That's against the rules. And I talked to him after the game. He said that it's against the rules, but there's not a penalty for it, so he didn't know how to enforce another mentor guarding an athlete.
Okay.
So that's why we were trying to ask if there's something that we could set up that the officials can be notified about as well.
Yeah, I know that Keith Lampell and I don't know if you know who Keith is. Keith's our head official. Have had, I know at the end of the season last year and then afterwards had several different conversations. But yeah, certainly we can clarify that. And yeah, I mean, there isn't a penalty specified necessarily, but they can do a change of possession or something like that that we can definitely clarify for them to make them more comfortable in making that call. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, anybody else with Howard with a question? Nope. Lower Shore. Anybody from Lower Shore with a question? Nope. Okay, Montgomery County.
Hey, Mike, Chuck Helmuth.
Hey, Chuck, how are you?
Good. We've got to set up something specifically about how these various rules about fairness are officiated on the court. We had a game last year that 100% of the points were scored by one player, and that player obviously never sat. And I kept saying to the other coach, you got to sit him to be fair. And I said, ref, and the ref said, I don't have any rules. And I kept looking around for somebody to talk to, and there was nobody there. There's got to be some specific guidelines that either the refs or somebody standing nearby can enforce in what I think is pretty obvious situations.
Okay, and that's the 3-on-3 situation you're talking about specifically.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Let me talk with Keith and see what maybe we can work out.
And another time, this happened last year. Another time, 3-on-3 teams typically have 6 players.
Right.
Somehow mysteriously, the other team's 2 worst players weren't there for our game, but they were there for the next game.
I do know that, the standard is, and we can verify this, but other than in some kind of unique situation, and these would be truly unique, I can't tell you what one would be, but unique situation, other than that, something odd like that, who you start the tournament with, not counting any kind of an injury, who you start the tournament with is who you play with throughout the time. So that you can't. You're right. You're not having the team roster change in the middle of the game.
Right.
Similarly, once you establish that roster at the beginning of the season, by that February 3rd date, that's your roster that stays throughout. So
I'm just saying they just mysteriously didn't show up for this one game.
Okay. Did that happen?
They were there for the game that was 1 hour later.
Or did that happen repeatedly, or just the one time?
Well, it happened so that we got. So that they won, and we got down to the loser bracket.
Okay. I'm actually going to check. I'll have Melissa. I keep saying I'll do this. I'm so used to having me, but now that I've got Melissa.
Right, but we had the same conversation 2 years ago when I explained that one, and I said we need somebody there on the court, to actually. Make a decision to tell the refs, either stop this or do this or change that. And that didn't happen last year. And so, if one player is scoring all 28 points, it seems pretty obvious that they should be told to sit at some point during the game.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I can see some situations where one player is scoring all the points or virtually all the points, and the other players are contributing meaningfully to the game as well.
They weren't.
I know the situation that you're describing, that probably wouldn't apply in that situation. It would be that's a little different, but it's kind of a balance between the meaningful involvement and not getting too much into a coach's team strategy. But I'm going to I'll have Melissa, as she takes on the responsibility for basketball, for her and Keith, to talk through what maybe we can do in those scenarios, and we'll get something codified and out to folks before the first tournament.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Sure. Anybody else from Montgomery with a question?
Hey, Mike, it's Katie. How are you?
Hey, Katie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I have two quick questions. One for our qualifiers. You said that there was a minimum players needed. Last year I ran into a situation where we knew we were going to have one missing, and another one of my athletes got into an accident on the car ride there, was not able to make it.
Right.
Is that going to arise for any of our qualifiers if I only have 4 going into it?
Is this a 5-on-5 team or a 3-on-3?
3-on-3.
Now, the roster size, the minimum roster, let me back up. Get back onto that page.
So I think it was a minimum of 5, but a maximum of 8.
That's your roster.
Okay, so if we go into a qualifier, that's not going to have an issue. We
Correct.
can have just the 4 walk in. Okay.
However, and this is, I mean, I didn't cover it here necessarily, but, I mean, if you have a player who doesn't show, other than, again, they're in a car accident, that's a little bit of a unique situation, hopefully. You know, all of your players need to play in 2 qualifiers as well. So,
okay.
So that if they don't show or whatever, that you're going to have to make sure that you get another, and hopefully you will. Hopefully you're not talking just 2. I know you guys in Montgomery County do an excellent job of getting as many games in as you can.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, it's you need to start a game and not have it as a forfeit. You need to put a team on the court.
Okay. And then my second question, again, is always jerseys. I have one player that I know is police for my team and another player that's on another team that have slight anxieties about their weight. Are they able, do we change any rules where they're able to wear something underneath of it as long as it's matching the shorts?
What we had in place last year is we would be doing again this year. I do remember that situation. I don't remember all the specific details on that. I'll have Melissa, I can fill her in more detail on that.
Okay. So I was going to say, if it's just requiring a doctor's note, I can definitely get something like that. That way she's able to play comfortably.
Sure. Okay.
But that was just one of my questions, again, to see if there was anything that has changed rules-wise where she's able to play a little bit more comfortably.
Yeah, no, the rules have not changed, but we can look at how we're applying those, and you know, I can't sit here and guarantee you that we'll make a change.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Because I understand, you know, we want them all to look alike, but, you know, like I said, just having something at least underneath of it that way she's a little more comfortable playing.
Right, right. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Anybody else from Montgomery County with a question? And thank you to our counties with later in the alphabet for your patience as we get to Prince George's County. Any questions?
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is Pam from Lower Shore.
Oh, hi.
I think the question with the team where they had one person who was making all the points, what I find is if I have a question regarding the modifications or rules specific to Special Olympics, that at the time that I need a clarification or I need the official to do something about it, it's hard for me to find someone from the state of Maryland or for whoever's running the competition at the time when I need it. And I know there's supposed to be somebody close by with a, excuse me, like a walkie-talkie, but in a few cases, you know, as a coach, and I'm trying to coach, and I, you know, try to get somebody else to find somebody
with the walkie-talkie, it ends up that by the time we get the answer, it's basically too late.
Right.
That game.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, we have the walkie-talkies at the state tournament, and there certainly will be as appropriate them at the scorers tables. That's typically not the case at the qualifiers and all. Where hopefully these issues are resolved. I know that Melissa will be at virtually all of the qualifiers. Either she or I will be there. I think there might be one or two, or with some, if we add some additional ones. And then I'm sorry, when I say the qualifiers, I'm talking about the ones that are on that list of 8 that we have slotted now. I'm not going to say that we're definitely going to be at every individual one-on-one game or anything like that. No, but what I'm saying is that that's something that if there's an issue that we can address earlier in the season, so that we can also then empower the officials a little bit better in terms of how to make and how to apply those rules if they have any kind of a question or any kind of a discomfort with that. Again, I'll talk through with Melissa on some opportunities to possibly how we can improve that.
Okay. I just know that that's what happens to me sometimes. You know what the rule is, but sometimes the officials, and it's not really the officials' fault, but you would like to have, because when I coach my guys, I train them with the 3-second rule and stuff like that. If we have a high-level team, it should be called. I'm not talking about low level. I'm talking about high level.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, son.
Sure. Again, I'm sorry. PG or Prince George's? Anybody? Nope. St. Mary's? Any questions?
Hey, Mike. I have one.
Okay.
Two small ones. One is it looks like there's a couple of days with multiple qualifiers or mandatory qualifiers on the same day. Is there going to be an issue getting referees?
We actually have tapped into an additional group, and Melissa, I will tell you right now, yes, so I'm certainly concerned. We got these 2 dates here, these 2, and then particularly on the 8th.
The big one is the McDaniel, since everyone. I mean, you got all the adult teams all going.
Right.
So that's one concern.
Yeah, no, we're tapping into some other groups, including actually reconnected with an old friend of mine from 20 years ago who used to know in my Rec and Parks days. So we're doing whatever we can in those dates to make sure that we've got the necessary coverage. Getting facilities. We had a couple of these events where I think the date changed 3 times because of different things with the facility. So we know that that's a challenge, we'll do everything that we can. For example, and this is one of those situations on the 8th where Melissa will be at one location and I'll be at the other. Similarly, probably on the 1st and the 15th as well, so that we have somebody in place.
And I got one other quick question. In years past, I know St. Mary's, we have gone to tournaments in Virginia to play. Will those still count?
Those will certainly count as competitions. They're not going to count towards the minimum, and this is because we sort of got stung, and it was my call last year on this, but with one of the counties who did we wound up in a situation where we saw we saw in that case, I think it was 4 teams. We saw them once. And so for the second qualifier, it needs to be with a state of Maryland, a team, hopefully at one of these other qualifiers that we've got here on this list, because we'll be able to be there and see a lot of different teams.
Yeah, because the reason I'm concerned is there's only a couple, and there's a couple on the same day. So I mean, you can there's not right now. There's not a whole lot of options. So.
Well, yeah and no. I mean, we've got between the Montgomery County, the Calvert County, the UMBC, which I'm almost certain is going to have both 3-on-3 and 5-on-5. There's several options there. We should have that clarified in the next few days. So you've got that there. You've got there's almost definitely not going to be any extra space at either the Howard County 3-on-3 or the Carroll County 5-on-5 qualifier. And in other words, they can just accommodate and only accommodate the teams that meet those requirements that are there. There's probably going to be a little bit of extra space at the Severance School, even with us going down to 2 courts. Looking at the numbers, unless we have a big surge in the number of teams in those age brackets, 5-on-5 teams in those age brackets, maybe we can handle a few extra teams there. But then in addition, like I say, if we can't work something like that out, then there is certainly the option of you going with some kind of a matchup that matches your team's abilities. So that's something that you can work with Nick on that to see what will work out best. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Mike and Don, actually. This is Mark Fondren. Mary Lou wanted me to ask and see if there's any interest in a St. Mary's qualifier. Looks like either January 31st or February 1st. And for those that are interested, if you can shoot Mary Lou Beachy an email by Wednesday of this week. And her email is somdsmc@md.metrocast.net.
Okay. I'll tell you what, does it have to be by Wednesday? Can we give people till Thursday?
Yeah, I think Thursday will work.
Okay, the reason being is that I can, no later than tomorrow afternoon or close of business tomorrow, we'll get this out. I can include that because nobody's going to remember that email right now. I can include that in the information that goes out with the slides, with the link for the YouTube and other stuff. So that they can. But if they just get it on Tuesday, their ability to respond by Wednesday is going to be limited. If we can give them an extra day, that would be great.
Yep, I think Thursday will work. She just needs some time for facilities. So.
Okay. Great, thank you. Okay. Any other questions from St. Mary's?
I'm good here.
Okay. Upper Shore. Any questions from Upper Shore?
Nothing here.
Great. Thank you. And thank you to our friends in Washington County for being so patient. Is there any questions from anybody in Washington County? Next time we do this, we'll start with the Washington County and go backwards. So.
Guess not.
Any questions? Nope. Okay. Then before I open it up to anybody who had any certification questions, is there anybody who had in the course of those, I'm not going to go through the list again, any other basketball-specific related questions that came to mind, or if you forgot to ask, and we can just not step on each other, but I'll just open it up. Anybody else have any other basketball questions that you didn't get a chance, or you forgot how to unmute your phone?
Mike, this is Cara again from Howard County.
Sure. Hi, Kara.
Last year we talked about making sure that the basketball rules guide, one was at each table, so that way if we needed to get clarification, it was there. Can we try to do that again this year?
Yeah, one of the things that Melissa and I have talked about, and we'll talk about some more, is what specifically do we want to have available at all the tournaments, and that's something I think a copy of the rules, copy of the sports guide, copy of any. There's some officiating guides, one pagers that are sort of the top 5 things the officials need to remember for situations and so on down the line, that we can be sure. But we'll just confirm that, and at least for the multi events like this, we can certainly do that. The ones where if you're just scheduling it on your own, can't promise we can do something like that.
Right. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Great idea. Any other questions?
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
This is Coach Latham from St. Mary's. How are you?
Hi. How are you?
I'm doing well. Also with the not so much the officiating, but the scorekeepers tables. We had a big problem last year of a lot of the scorekeepers getting dreary-eyed and staring into space and missing vital points in a lot of the games. Is there anything that can be done to make sure that the scorekeepers are being very attentive to the game so this doesn't happen in the past? We had a big problem with it last year, especially with a couple of my games.
Was that a particular event, or was that just across the board?
This was at the Glenelg School, the country school.
Okay. We can certainly talk with Jack and Dave. I think it was Dave's voice who asked the question earlier. But as a reminder and such, and can emphasize it with them. I wish I could sit here and guarantee that won't happen.
Right.
But we can certainly look at steps to try to minimize the likelihood of it happening.
Okay. Sounds good. That's all I have. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Okay.
Any other basketball questions? Okay. Then I can stay on for a little bit of time if people have some coach certification questions. I think that was the one thing that was hanging out there. And again, there is a session scheduled for, again, I can't necessarily look at my calendar as easily here, but there is one scheduled for, I believe it's next week. We'll include that in the email that goes out. But any questions related to certification?
Yes, this is Jackie. The seminar, or whatever you want to call it, that was held before Christmas, that counts as the certification for basketball that Melissa facilitated. It was before Christmas in December.
She did a couple of those, yeah. There was one in Howard County and one in Prince George's County, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
the one in Howard County. In other words, anybody that signed the sheet that was there, that counts as the certification.
That counts as that. I need to be careful how I word this. That counts as the sport component for certification.
Yeah. Okay.
So I mean,
I get it. If you're a new coach, if you're a previous coach and you've had certifications, this is re-upping your certification.
Right. Exactly.
Then you have to do the other stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which we've done already. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And that said, also, and we sent out back before, between Thanksgiving and Christmas/Hanukkah, we sent out a list of sessions that were scheduled. There actually is, if you're looking for a coaching Special Olympics athlete session, there's one tomorrow night that's being hosted live at Special Olympics headquarters. But we've got a team of folks who are knowledgeable and are certified or have gone through the training to be able to present that. So we can certainly, you can work with your area director to look at hosting additional sessions of that type if you need that. There is in Calvert County, not this, I don't think it's this Friday, it's next Friday if I remember correctly, another basketball coaches session that's offered there. There's several that are being offered online as webinars as well. So we'll include those reminders in the when we send the stuff out from tonight, an updated list. Any other certification questions? I hear a voice, but I can barely hear. It sounds like a man's voice. Could you speak up? Again, if someone was asking a question there, I don't hear you. I'm sorry. If it's something you can, again, you can contact Melissa, Nick, or Sam, and they can answer the questions for you. directly if for some reason tonight your phone isn't, we can't hear you. So, last call. Any other questions on certification or anything at all? Can't say much on the meaning of life, but I can give that a shot too. Okay, that's it. Thank you again, everyone, for taking well, it worked out to be about an hour and a half now, for joining us for the session tonight. Hope everybody had a great holiday. We're looking forward to having a great season, and appreciate your time. I'll include in there, in the thing that goes out with this, all this information, the link for the pre-competition session that was announced in the information that went out in December. But we'll have another webinar then. If there seems to be a need to have one mid-season, we can certainly do that as well. And hopefully for the one in March before the state tournament, we'll have handed all of basketball over to Miss Melissa Anger, and I know that she'll be doing an excellent job to provide you the support and assistance that you need. So thanks much, and look forward to having a great season with you. Good night.